Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It's funny, the way certain smells can punch you in the gut. Like yesterday, I walked into this old thrift bookstore on 7th, and there it was, that faint mix of yellowing paper, dust, and leftover incense someone probably burned 10 years ago. It hit me like a wave. It smelled exactly like our first apartment. You know, the one above that vegan cafe that somehow always reeked of burnt lentils and patchouli. That place was tiny. The kind of tiny where you had to shimmy sideways past the fridge just to open the bathroom door. But we made it ours. String lights, crooked shelves he put up without a level. One sad little fern we named Patrick Swayze because it had ghost energy. And I remember clear as glass standing there, box cutter in hand, looking over at him unpacking his records, and thinking, this could be it. This could be the whole story. But I didn't say it. I never did. My name's Daniel. I'm 54 now. Used to teach high school English, retired last year. Kids loved The Catcher in the Rye. Way more than they should have. But I always told them it was okay to feel misunderstood. Maybe because I was saying it more to myself than to them. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And what time it is there, I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. His name was Theo. God. Even saying it out loud now feels disloyal somehow. My wife doesn't know. My son doesn't know. Not the whole thing anyway. We moved in together in '97. I'd just turned 27. He was 25, had a crooked front tooth, and this way of biting his lip when he was concentrating that I found completely distracting. He was a graphic designer, which sounded fancy, but meant he spent hours at our shaky little kitchen table, arguing with fonts and getting irritated with printers. I told people we were roommates. I told myself the same thing, at least out loud. We split rent, furniture, groceries, but we also shared a bed and late night routines like brushing our teeth at the same sink, and a language of little touches, fingers brushing as we passed, a glance across a party, a sleepy shoulder nuzzle on Sunday mornings. You don't do that with a roommate. But I kept it compartmentalized. I didn't invite my family over. I never used the word partner out loud. At work, I referred to him as my buddy or my housemate. God, I wince even saying that now. But back then, it felt safer. Or so I told myself. I remember once, we were in line at the corner coffee shop. Theo always ordered something absurdly complicated with almond milk and 3 pumps of cinnamon, and the barista said, "You two make a cute couple." And I laughed too loud. Said something like, "Nah, we just live together." While Theo just smiled this small, tired smile. That was the first time I saw it in his eyes. A flicker, not anger, not sadness, just retreat, like a curtain being drawn. He didn't push. He rarely did. That was Theo, gentle, patient, maybe too patient. I told myself I was protecting us, but really, I was protecting me from judgment, from discomfort, from the idea that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as brave as I thought I was. We had rituals. Tuesdays were taco night. Sundays, we did the Times crossword in bed. We never went to Pride, never held hands in public. We never said, "I love you" out loud. Though once I wrote it in a note and stuffed it in his coat pocket. He never mentioned it, but he kept it. I found it years later, creased like a secret map. There was this one night early on when I came home late from grading papers. I walked in and found him asleep on the couch, TV humming low, half-eaten bowl of popcorn on the coffee table. And for a second, the image felt like home, like future, like the version of adulthood I'd secretly always wanted but never said out loud. And yet, When my parents called, I told them I lived alone. When old college friends visited, I made Theo stay with his sister. He never argued. That was the thing. One night, over dinner, he asked, quietly, "Do you ever think we'll tell people I cut my chicken too forcefully? Tell them what he looked down?" You know what? I shrugged, took a bite, changed the subject. The silence after that stretched wide, like a crack in the drywall we kept meaning to patch. I think I believed, deep down, that we had time, that once I was more established, or once society caught up, or once I figured myself out, I'd be able to say the thing out loud. This is the man I love. But time, as it turns out, doesn't wait for cowards, and I was one. The joke is, my students used to come to me with their secrets, their questions, their fears. I'd nod and say, "It's okay to be unsure. Just don't wait forever." Meanwhile, I was waiting so long, I forgot what I was waiting for. And that, right there, that tiny corrosive pause between truth and comfort, that's where everything started to rot. The kiss wasn't planned. We were on the rooftop of our building, this crumbling old thing with rusted railings and a view of the alley dumpsters. It wasn't romantic by any usual definition, but it was ours. That night. We brought up a blanket, to set him in a couple of those tiny airplane bottles of whiskey I'd swiped them from a conference at the school. We were celebrating something, though for the life of me, I don't remember what. Maybe his client finally paid an invoice. Maybe I'd survived parent-teacher conferences without crying in the supply closet. We lay side by side, looking up at the patchy stars, city lights bleeding into the sky. There was a breeze, cool but not cold. And somewhere, a car alarm kept hiccuping. Theo was telling me some story about his roommate from art school, and I wasn't really listening, not fully. I was too focused on the way his voice dropped when he got nostalgic. The way he rubbed the seam of the blanket between his thumb and index finger while he talked. That small motion, over and over. And then, without ceremony, he turned his head and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic, just slow, quiet, like we were already in the middle of something and had forgotten where it began. I laughed, not because it was funny, because I was terrified. It wasn't our first kiss, technically, but it was the first one that felt real, like we weren't just playing house behind drawn blinds, like we were actually saying something. I remember the look on his face when I laughed, half hurt, half amused. "Wow," he said, pulling back slightly. "Just what every guy wants to hear?" A laugh. "No," I said too quickly. "God, no. I wasn't expecting it." He raised an eyebrow. "We've lived together for 6 months. Dan, you didn't expect I'd kiss you eventually." "I don't know." I said, "I guess I hoped you would. But then, I also hoped you wouldn't." He nodded, like that made some kind of sense. It didn't, but he didn't press. Theo always let me stay where I was emotionally, even when I was clearly stuck in the mud. We didn't talk much after that. We just lay there. The distance between us now, a little warmer, a little heavier. I don't think we kissed again that night. But something had shifted. The air around us felt charged. Or maybe I was just sweating from fear. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. How easily it could have gone another way. If I'd kissed him back properly. If I'd said something brave. If I'd been someone else. The next morning, we acted normal. Coffee, laundry, the Sunday crossword. I handed him a spoon without looking directly at him. He hummed under his breath. Some song I didn't know, as if nothing had changed. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe it had all changed. The thing is, we didn't have a language for what we were. Or maybe I did and just wouldn't say it. At that time, in that part of the country, men like me weren't expected to say things like, "I'm in love with him." We were expected to be discreet, buttoned up, beige. And I was a master at beige. At school, I played the part. Staff meetings, cafeteria duty, drama club sponsor. Parents loved me. Students trusted me. I dated a woman briefly during those years, Rachel, the sweet librarian who loved old maps and hated onions. We went to the movies twice. I held her hand. But when she leaned in once during a cold walk to the train, I flinched. She said nothing, but didn't call again. Back home, Theo never asked where I'd been. There's a kind of ache in being with someone who never pushes you. You think it's love, and maybe it is, but it's also a mirror, and I didn't want to see myself in it. He started spending more time out late nights at design meetups, brunches with people I never met. I told myself it was fine, that we were both busy, that I wasn't jealous. I even joked once, "Don't fall in love with some guy in skinny jeans and make me have to fight him." Theo smiled, but didn't laugh. Said, "You wouldn't." And he was right. I wouldn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to care out loud. Looking back, I see how much of our relationship was unspoken, held in sideways glances, in routines, in the way we folded laundry or chose which movie to rent. I used to think that was intimacy. Now I think it was avoidance, dressed up as comfort. We made a lot of meals together. He cooked. I chopped vegetables. He'd hum to himself, barefoot in the kitchen, tossing garlic in a pan, like he was conducting an orchestra. I burned toast even with a timer. He used to say I was endearingly useless, which I pretended to be annoyed by. He liked touch. I didn't. Or I said I didn't. The truth was, I was afraid that if I leaned into him fully, physically, emotionally, I'd fall in and never find my way back out. So I built walls. I called them boundaries. Cute, right? One night, we were brushing our teeth, and he suddenly stopped and looked at me in the mirror. "You ever feel like you're holding your breath all the time?" he asked. I spat, rinsed. "What do you mean I don't know?" he said, shrugging. "Just like we're waiting for permission." He didn't say from who. He didn't need to. I met his eyes for a second, then looked away. I didn't answer. Not really. Just mumbled something about how we needed more toothpaste. And that was the moment, the exact moment I think we both realized we were on borrowed time. It was Thanksgiving. The year my sister had her second baby. The year my dad had his first heart scare, but insisted on carving the turkey anyway. Theo had never met my family. Not properly. He'd seen a few old Polaroids I kept tucked in books. Heard stories, half-hearted ones I told like folklore. Dad was a military guy. Mom used to knit those awful Christmas sweaters. My sister's the golden child. Naturally, I made it sound light, but it was heavy. Inviting him to Thanksgiving wasn't some grand gesture. It was logistical. Really? I didn't want to leave him alone in the apartment for 4 days. "Come with me," I said. "They won't bite." He asked once, hesitantly. "What will you say I am?" I didn't answer. We packed his overnight bag in silence. He still came. The drive to my parents' place was 4 hours of small talk and 90s rock on low volume. I watched the shadows shift on his face as we passed under overpasses. Each one a brief moment of dark. My childhood home hadn't changed much. Plastic-covered sofas in the formal room no one used. Faded wallpaper with sailboats. The smell of lemon cleaner and something vaguely meaty. My dad opened the door in his usual uniform, tucked-in polo. Belt too tight, socks pulled up like armor. My mom wore an apron over her church dress, like she always did, even when she wasn't cooking. "This is Theo," I said at the threshold. No labels, no explanations, just that. My dad shook his hand with the same face he used for new mailmen. My mom smiled like she was suppressing a sneeze. Theo, to his credit, was gracious, polite. Offered the bottle of wine he'd chosen with way too much thought. We'd debated it for an hour at the store. I'd snapped at him about tannins. He didn't argue, just chose something safe. Dinner was quiet. My sister and her husband did most of the talking. Stories about the baby's new words, about preschool politics, about a neighbor's ugly lawn decorations. My mom passed dishes like she was dealing cards in Vegas quick, impersonal, all wrists. Theo made a joke about sweet potatoes being nature's dessert, and I laughed too hard, too loud. No one else did, at one point. My father looked up and asked, "So, what do you do?" "Theo graphic design," Theo said. "Smile easy, mostly for nonprofits. I like helping small orgs find their visual voice." My father nodded slowly, like he was trying to translate a foreign language in his head. "Huh? Well, as long as you can pay the bills, I suppose." I stared down at my cranberry sauce. Later, while Theo helped clear the table, a reflex he had in any house. Even strangers, my mom pulled me aside in the hallway. "He seems nice," she said, voice low. "He is?" She paused, glancing back toward the kitchen. "You too close," I swallowed. "Yeah, we live together." Another pause. "I see." She didn't ask anything else. She didn't have to. Her face closed like a door that wouldn't slam, but wouldn't open again either. That night, Theo and I shared the pullout in the basement. Cold sheets, a lumpy mattress that groaned with every breath. I lay stiff, turned toward the wall. He reached for my hand beneath the blanket. I flinched, not away, but enough that he noticed. He didn't try again. In the morning, we had eggs in silence. My dad read the paper. My mom reorganized the dishwasher, even though Theo had already done it perfectly. My sister took a photo of the group, one of those awkward, lopsided family shots on the porch. Theo stood slightly apart from me. I let him. I wonder sometimes what it would have been like if I'd introduced him properly. This is Theo. He's my partner, even just boyfriend. If I'd been brave enough to use that word out loud, but I didn't. And that absence echoed louder than anything we could have said on the drive home. Theo didn't speak much, just hummed quietly to himself. I tried to make jokes. Something about how my dad could intimidate the devil. Something about the turkey being dry enough to use as chalk. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. About halfway home, we stopped for gas. I came back from the cashier with snacks, his favorite sour gummy worms, even though I hated the smell of them. I handed him the bag and said, "Hey, thanks for coming." He looked at me like I was a puzzle with one piece missing. "Yeah," he said, "of course." And that was it. But something broke in him that weekend. Not loudly, not violently. Just a soft fracture, like the hairline crack in our living room wall that kept getting longer, but never fully collapsed. I could see it widening over the next few weeks. The way he stopped dancing when music came on. The way he started sleeping, facing the opposite wall. One night, he came home late. Smelled like someone else's cologne. I didn't ask. He didn't offer. We lay in bed, back to back. A canyon of silence between us. I wanted to reach for him. Say something. Anything. But all I said was, "Did you remember to buy milk?" He didn't answer. And honestly, I wouldn't have known what to do if he had. It started with a joke. One night in early spring, we were both on the couch, him sketching on his tablet, me half watching a rerun of Frasier. Pretending I wasn't staring at the way his foot bobbed while he concentrated, I asked, mostly to fill the space, "Do you think we'll still be doing this when we're 50? He looked up. "Doing what?" "Living together. Watching neurotic white guys yell at each other on TV, being like this," I said. The air shifted. I don't know why I opened the door. He set his tablet down. "I don't know. Do you?" I shrugged. I guess I figured this was temporary. His mouth tightened, but not in anger. He folded his hands in his lap like he was preparing for a serious exam. What would not temporary look like? The words sat between us like spilled water. Unavoidable. Spreading. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about jobs, retirement accounts, my parents' faces, the inevitable explanations. I was thinking about my sister, asking why I never brought someone real to family events. I was thinking about the old neighbor lady who once asked if Theo was my nephew. I don't know, I said finally, after tenure. Maybe when I'm more ready? He nodded. So, we wait. It's not forever, I said, as if that helped. Just until he gave me this look. So patient it made my skin itch. Until what? Dan. And I couldn't say it. Not truthfully. So we made a pact. Unspoken, but real. We'd wait. Until things were more stable. Until his career took off. Until I didn't flinch at the thought of telling my father. We joked about it after our big gay waiting room. He called it. We laughed. But it wasn't funny. Things fell into rhythm. Too easy. Too safe. We were excellent at routines. Grocery trips. Friday night Thai food. Our own separate laundry baskets because Theo insisted I ruined his shirts in the dryer. We never fought about big things. Only minor absurdities, why I never refilled the Brita. Why he always left the toothpaste cap off. I once yelled at him over the way he folded the bath towels. He didn't respond, just unfolded them and did it again. Slower. I told myself this was functional, mature, quiet love. But the quiet started to sound like absence. One night, I woke up to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring at the floor like it had whispered something unspeakable. You okay? I asked. Groggy. He turned halfway. Yeah, just couldn't sleep. I didn't reach for him, I said. Okay, and rolled back over. A month later, he started a new job. Fancy agency. Big clients. More hours. Better pay. He came home later and later, ate dinner standing up, stopped watching shows with me. I assumed it was stress. I told myself it was a good thing, progress, ambition, momentum. But deep down, I knew what was happening. He was pivoting, slowly, respectfully, away from me. We still did the crossword on Sundays, but he started leaving certain clues blank. I noticed. One afternoon, he met me at the park near my school. We sat on a bench and watched a kid try to fly a kite with absolutely no wind. The tail just dragged across the grass like it had given up. Would you ever leave this city, he asked. I blinked. Why? Just wondering. I've been thinking about the coast. Somewhere quieter, warmer. I didn't know whether he meant with me or without me, so I asked nothing. We just sat, kite boy screaming at the sky. Both of us pretending not to understand what we were talking about. Weeks passed, spring became summer. My classroom emptied. Theo's new job consumed him, and still we waited until something shifted, until someone made a move. It came on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen, halfway through chopping an onion when my phone buzzed. Theo had texted, "Can we talk tonight after dinner?" I stared at the screen for longer than made sense, like the pixels might rearrange themselves into something gentler. I texted back, "Sure," that evening. He came home early. No laptop, no tablet, just him. He set the keys down, looked around like the apartment belonged to someone else. Dinner was quiet. I made pasta, overcooked it. Neither of us complained. We sat on the couch, plates in laps. I could feel the shape of the conversation before he even spoke. "Dan," he said, slowly, "how long are we going to pretend this is working?" I didn't move. My fork hovered in midair. "I mean it," he said. "This thing, us, it's stalled." I wanted to scream that it wasn't, that I still loved him, that I was just scared. But the words were too big to pass through my throat. He waited, always waiting. "Do you want to leave?" I asked. He didn't say no. Instead, he said, "I want something that doesn't feel like hiding." That was the moment, the pivot. I felt my stomach drop like a carnival ride. And still, I said nothing. Eventually, he sighed, took our plates to the sink. I watched his back the whole way. It looked tired, smaller somehow. Later that night, I sat at the edge of the bed where he once stared at the floor, and for the first time, I cried. Not because he was leaving, but because I was too much of a coward to ask him to stay. I saw his name light up on my phone 3 weeks later. It was a Monday. I'd stayed late at school grading essays about To Kill a Mockingbird. My classroom filled with the rustle of cheap red pens and the buzz of fluorescent lights. My students had been writing about justice and courage and standing up for what's right, and I couldn't help but feel like a fraud. I wrote good insight in the margins of a paper and wanted to rip it in half. When I finally got home, there was a sticky note on the fridge. Theo's handwriting. Just 3 words I took Patrick. The fern. The ghost plant. I laughed out loud one short, cracked sound that died quickly. It was the kind of joke only someone who'd shared your pillows would think to make. I opened the fridge. Empty. A metaphor. If there ever was one. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed was too big, too quiet. The hum of the fan wasn't enough. So I walked the apartment like it was a crime scene. Not a trace of him left, no socks under the bed. No forgotten coffee mugs. No doodles taped to the fridge. And then my phone buzzed. Theo 7:46 p.m. Hey, I know it's late. Can we talk just once? Properly? I stared at it. The kind of stare you give a memory that walks back into the room without knocking. I didn't respond. An hour passed, then another. I composed replies in my head. Sure. Want to come over? Can't. Too much right now. I miss you. But I sent nothing. Closed the thread. Put the phone face down. He never texted again. I liked to pretend I had a reason. That I needed space. That I was giving us both time. But the truth is uglier. I was afraid that if I answered, I'd have to face what I'd broken. That I'd hear something I couldn't unhear, like him saying goodbye for real. Or worse, saying he still loved me when I knew I didn't deserve it. It's strange how silence can feel louder than shouting. The days that followed stretched out like gum sticky, flavorless, and impossible to throw away. Friends asked where he'd gone. I said, he moved out? Roommate stuff, I added, like that explained anything. One night, I found myself scrolling back through our texts. We didn't say much, not often. We shared links, memes, reminders. The last normal message from him was, can you pick up dish soap? The lemon one, not lavender. Smells like regret. He was funny. I forgot that. Funny in this dry, effortless way that made you feel like you were sharing a secret. I missed that. Missed the sound of him singing badly in the shower. Missed the way he'd narrate our cat's thoughts, like a BBC nature documentary. But I didn't call, didn't write, didn't show up at his sister's. I just folded inward, like a closing book. A week later, I ran into an old student of mine at the grocery store. She said, hey, Mr. Palmer, haven't seen you in forever. How's your partner? My heart hiccuped. I smiled too wide. He's good. I lied. Busy. I paid for frozen dinners and toothpaste and stood in the parking lot for 10 minutes, keys in hand, not moving. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't come in black veils and violin music. It comes in casual questions from people who don't know you're bleeding. One night, I had a dream that Theo and I were back in our old apartment. Everything was as it had been, same furniture, same smell. Even the fern somehow resurrected. He was in the kitchen, barefoot, humming. He turned to me and said, you finally told them? I smiled in the dream, said, yeah, I did. He kissed me on the cheek, and then the whole room faded out, like a watercolor left in the rain. I woke up crying, not loud, just quietly, pillow damp, throat tight. I started seeing someone else eventually, years later, a woman, kind, smart, stable. We had a quiet courtship, the kind that begins with mutual grocery shopping and ends with shared mortgages. I told myself I was ready, that the past was past, but sometimes, at night, I'd scroll through old photos, the few I hadn't deleted. Theo in his paint-splattered hoodie. Theo holding Patrick like it was a newborn. Theo asleep on the couch, one sock half off. I told myself I'd handled it maturely, that we just drifted, that it was mutual, but it wasn't. He reached out. I didn't answer. And there's no spin, no justification that makes that choice feel okay. Not even now. Sometimes I imagine what he would have said if I had answered. Maybe he would have asked to try again. Maybe he would have told me he was leaving the city. Maybe he just wanted to return the spare key he'd had cut in secret for emergencies. I'll never know. And the thing that haunts me most, he gave me an outstretched hand, and I let it hang there. When I told my wife, I didn't mean to. It wasn't some planned confessional moment over candlelight or tears. It came out in the middle of a Tuesday. We were folding laundry, matching socks, stacking towels, and she asked if I'd ever thought about reaching out to old friends. Anyone you miss, she said casually, like she was asking about old coworkers or high school buddies. And I said his name, Theo. She kept folding, but I felt the shift, a brief pause. The kind that isn't really about silence, but about everything that just got rearranged behind someone's face. She said, Theo. Yeah, I replied. We lived together years ago, before you and I met. Oh, like a roommate? I should have said yes. Should have nodded and moved on. But my hands stilled on a t-shirt, hers, soft from too many washes, and I heard myself say, no, not like that. There was a moment, just a sliver, where she didn't breathe. I could feel it, like a pause in a song right before the last note. She looked at me. Dan, were you in love with him? And I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't even sure, even love covered it. Some things burrow so deep they stop being feelings and start being climate. Weather. A low pressure in the chest that never lifts. I said, I think I was. But I don't know if I ever told him that. She sat down on the bed, slowly, like someone easing onto a frozen lake, afraid it might crack. I didn't know you, she started, then stopped. Have you told anyone else? No? I said, not really. We sat in the muffled room, socks in small sad piles between us. Outside, a dog barked. A car passed. A breeze made the curtain twitch like it was trying to leave the room. You should have told me, she said. Not angry, just tired. I didn't think it mattered anymore. I told her, of course it matters, she said quietly, if it still lives in you. I wanted to tell her everything. About the rooftop kiss. About the night I didn't answer his message. About Patrick the Fern and the pack to wait until. But all I could do was sit there, stunned by how much weight a memory could still carry, even when the person who lived inside it hadn't been in my life for over a decade. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. In the morning, she made coffee without a word. I kissed her on the cheek, and she didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. Marriage, in my experience, is less about love and more about endurance, about the quiet choice to stay, even when your partner confesses that there's a name in their past that still makes their hands shake. I thought telling her would release something, like finally unlatching a rusted door. But it only led to another door, and another. That week, I found myself revisiting old things, a shoebox in the attic labeled Mayask. But really, it meant things I didn't know how to throw away. Inside a coaster from the cafe where Theo always ordered that absurd almond milk latte. A Polaroid of him squinting in sunlight, middle of a hike we never finished because I twisted my ankle and made us turn back. A movie ticket stub to a sci-fi film I pretended to hate but secretly loved because he laughed so hard during it he cried. And at the very bottom, folded twice a letter I'd started but never sent. Theo, I know I've been quiet. I know I haven't given you what you deserve. I don't know how to explain the fear without sounding small. But I think about you more than I want to admit, and I miss the way you made the apartment feel less like a stopover and more like it cut off there. No date, no signature. I must have chickened out mid-sentence. I held it for a long time, thought about burning it or mailing it, or both. But I just folded it back up and slipped it into my wallet, where it sat like a small, private scar pressed between leather folds. My wife didn't bring him up again, not directly, but I'd catch her watching me sometimes, like she was trying to see where he'd been in me, what had changed, what had stayed. One night, while brushing her hair in the bathroom, she said, "I wish I'd known you then." I said, "I wasn't someone I'm proud of." She met my eyes in the mirror. "You still loved him." It wasn't a question, and I didn't argue, because yes, I did. And in some small, awful way, I still do. The last time I saw Theo was in a hotel lobby in Chicago. Not planned, not dramatic, just random and stupid. Like life always seems to be when it's trying to teach you something you don't want to learn. I was in town for a conference education reform, or some such bureaucratic nonsense. Lots of jargon, lots of handouts. I'd skip the last session to sneak back to the hotel and nap. My back had been acting up, and I was in one of those moods where even breathing too hard felt like a burden. I walked into the lobby, dragging my overnight bag behind me, already fantasizing about the tiny, overpriced minibar whiskey waiting upstairs. And then I saw him. At first, it didn't register. Just a man with a salt and pepper beard, back slightly stooped, checking his phone while waiting for the elevator. But then he shifted slightly, and something in my chest dropped. Theo, older, thinner. His hairline had receded a little, and he wore glasses now. But it was him, and beside him, a man, slightly younger, dark blazer, nice shoes, the kind of man who smiled with his whole face, who leaned in a little when Theo spoke. I froze, right in front of the concierge desk, like someone had unplugged me mid-step. He didn't see me at first, or if he did, he didn't let on. The elevator dinged, and they both stepped in, just before the doors closed. Theo glanced up and our eyes met. Half a second, maybe less. And in that half second, I saw everything surprise, recognition, and something else, something harder to name. Not anger, not quite sadness, just absence. The elevator closed. Gone. I stood there like an idiot, heart pounding. The concierge asked if I needed help. I said no and walked to the nearest chair before my legs could give out. He'd looked good, really good. The kind of good that happens when someone builds a life after you. I sat there for 20 minutes, hoping maybe he'd come back down. Maybe he'd forgotten something. Maybe the universe was going to give me a second chance to say hello. But the elevator stayed closed. The lobby emptied, and the fan above me made this soft clicking noise that I focused on just to keep from unraveling. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I turned off the TV, then back on. Flipped through the room service menu, even though I wasn't hungry. Every page felt like a distraction wrapped in plastic. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me. Or didn't. I considered writing a note. Something dumb like, "Hey, that was weird. I hope you're well. Room 503? But I didn't. The next morning, I checked out early. Told the receptionist I had a family emergency, which was a lie, but at least got me out of the breakfast mixer. I walked around the city for hours, coffee in one hand, Theo in my head. I passed a bookstore, Literature, and thought about how we used to leave notes in the backs of used paperbacks, little jokes or dares for future strangers to find. Once, he wrote in the last page of Slaughterhouse-Five, "If you're reading this, tell the person you love them, even if it's too late." At the time, I thought it was cute. Now, I think it was a warning. By late afternoon, I was on a train home, watching cities blur past the window. My reflection in the glass looked older than I felt, more tired, like someone who hadn't said what needed to be said and knew it was too late. I told my wife about it, sort of. Ran into someone I used to know. I said, over dinner? She nodded, distracted. I didn't elaborate. Later that night, she asked, was it him? I hesitated, and then nodded. Did you talk? No. Just saw him. Briefly. She said nothing after that. Just reached over and squeezed my hand. Soft, brief, but solid. I dreamed about the hotel that night, but in the dream, the lobby was empty. Just me, alone, no Theo, no man in the blazer, just the sound of an elevator that never came. I woke up with my jaw clenched so tight, I gave myself a headache. For days afterward, I couldn't stop thinking about that look, that flicker in his eyes. It wasn't anger, or longing, or even curiosity. It was peace. He was done with me. And that hurt in a way I wasn't ready for, because I'd held on to this secret thread in my mind, this idea that maybe he missed me. Maybe he still wondered. Maybe we were both just too proud, or too scared, or too tangled in other lives. But seeing him like that, happy, present, loved, showed me that he had moved on, and I hadn't. We met at a cafe, a week later. Not by fate this time, but my own clumsy desperation. After 3 days of sitting on that memory like it was a splinter under my skin, I cracked. I emailed him. An address I wasn't even sure still worked. Short message. Too short. I think I saw you in Chicago. I'd like to see you again. Even just to say hi properly, I didn't expect an answer. But he replied the next morning. 2 lines, yeah. That was me. I'm free Saturday, noon. Lantern Cafe on West 4th. I stared at it for 10 minutes, then typed and retyped my reply 3 times before landing on, see you then. I arrived early, of course. Sweaty palms, overdressed. Checking my reflection in the cafe window like a teenager on prom night. The barista smiled at me too long, probably wondering why this middle-aged man looked like he was preparing for a custody hearing. Then he walked in. Theo, the same Theo, and yet different. Softer around the eyes, a bit more gray in the beard. He wore a navy blue sweater, fitted just enough to look like he cared, loose enough to not try too hard. The same cologne, God, the same one. Instantly brought back the scent of our shared pillowcases. Hey, he said, casual, like it had been a month, not 14 years. Hey, I echoed, already unsure how to be in my own body. We ordered coffee, sat in a corner booth. I didn't know what to say, so I let him lead. You're still in the city, he asked. Yeah, teaching until last year. Retired now, he nodded. I moved out to the coast a while back. Came in to visit my husband's parents. I flinched at the word, not from jealousy, from finality. Married 5 years next month. I smiled. That's really good to hear. He shrugged. It's good. He's good. We're, real. We both sipped our drinks. A pause. Not awkward, but thick. He leaned back. You look well. I laughed. I look like someone who eats too much sodium and forgot to stretch for 15 years. He smirked. Still good with words? There it was. The thing that made me love him in the first place, that calm, razor-sharp wit. Always kind, but never indulgent. So, he said gently, why did you want to meet? And I said the only honest thing I could. I didn't answer your text. That night, I saw it, and I froze. I've regretted it every day since. He nodded, eyes soft. I figured. I started, then stopped. My hands were in my lap, fidgeting. I forced them still. I wanted to say sorry. For everything. For not being brave. For not showing up when it mattered. He looked out the window for a moment, like he needed a breath of anything else. I waited for you, he said, for a long time. Longer than I should have. I know. And when I finally stopped waiting, It felt like mourning someone who hadn't died. That landed like a weight in my chest. I didn't mean to be cruel. I said, "I know," he said. "You were just scared." But fear and cruelty feel pretty similar on the receiving end. We sat with that for a moment. "I wanted to tell you I loved you," I whispered. "Back then, so many times." He nodded again. "I know. I still think about the fern." That made him laugh, this light, real thing that made me both ache and breathe again. "Patrick," he said. "He lasted longer than we did. You kept him for a while. Gave him to a friend when I moved. He died in someone else's care, like most plants do." We both smiled, the kind of smile that knows too much. He looked at his watch. I should head out soon. Traffic's murder this time of day. "Of course," I said. Too quickly. "Yeah. I didn't mean to keep you." He reached for his coat, then paused. "I'm glad you reached out," he said. "Even if it's too late." He tilted his head. "Dan, it's not about being too late. Some things just don't come back the same. Doesn't mean they didn't matter." I nodded, throat tight. "You mattered? You still do?" He placed a hand on mine, warm, brief, then gone. "I know," he said. "I did my best to matter to you." Then he left. I sat in the booth for 20 minutes after he was gone, watching his coffee cup cool. I thought about all the words we didn't say, not out of malice, but out of where. I thought about how many versions of our life could have happened, and how none of them did. And for the first time, I didn't try to rewrite it in my head. For the first time, I just let the truth sit in my chest without trying to soften it. He loved me. I loved him. And I lost him. But at least, for one last hour, we got to be honest. It was my son who broke me. Months later. Not on purpose. Just one of those innocent moments kids drop like an anvil without realizing it. We were in the garage, cleaning out a mess of boxes that hadn't been touched since we moved into the new place. My wife had suggested strongly that it was time to get rid of the ghosts. Her polite way of saying, "Stop keeping junk you don't need." My son, Jeremy, he's 12, lanky, always a little too smart for his own good, was digging through an old tote of my college stuff. Yearbooks, mixtapes, some letters tied in twine. A shoebox came out, the cardboard so brittle the lid peeled apart. He held up an old Polaroid of me and Theo. We're sitting on a plaid couch, a bowl of popcorn between us, laughing at something just outside the frame. My eyes are scrunched in mid-laugh. Theo's head is tipped toward mine, and he's holding one hand over his chest like he's trying to keep his heart from bursting. "Who's this?" Jeremy asked. Totally casual. And I froze. I looked at the photo for a long moment, felt the edges of myself turn inward. I had a chance here to tell the truth, to pass down something real instead of an edited version. "That's Theo," I said. "A friend?" And there it was again. The out, the well-worn path back to silence. I could nod and move on. It would be easier, cleaner. Something in me cracked open. "It was more than that," I said, gently. "We lived together, a long time ago. Before I met your mom." Jeremy blinked. "Like, boyfriend?" I smiled. Yeah, kind of." Jeremy nodded. "Cool." Then he pulled out an old floppy disk and said, "What even is this? Is this like a pizza for computers?" And just like that, the storm passed. No judgment, no questions, just acceptance in its purest, most miraculous form. That night, after he went to bed, I sat with the photo. Really sat with it. No background noise, no distractions. I hadn't looked at it in years, maybe a decade, but in that image, there we were, still, laughing at something stupid. One shoulder almost touching the other, a space between us. Yes, but not the kind that swallows. I wanted to call someone, to say, "He knows, our kid knows." And he didn't run, but there was no one to call. Not really. So I sat on the floor with my back against the dusty wall, and I cried. Big, ugly tears. Not for Theo this time, or the past, but for all the years I convinced myself I couldn't say what was true. For all the moments I thought being known meant being left. And for the first time, I let go of the shame. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with trumpets or epiphanies. It just left, like fog lifting. Later, I told my wife the full story. Not just we lived together or it didn't work out. I told her what I felt, what I didn't say, what I still carry. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just took my hand and said, "I'm glad you told me." And I believed her. The days after that felt different. Not lighter, not instantly healed, but clearer, like I'd stopped holding my breath after years of convincing myself I wasn't suffocating. I started writing again, just little things, notes, memories. One night, I sat down and started a letter to Theo, not to send, just to write. Theo, I told my son about you today. He didn't blink, didn't laugh, just nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. I wish you could have seen it. I wish we'd lived in a time when that kind of reaction was common. But I'm glad he lives in it now. I hope, wherever you are, you're seen. Truly. The way I should have seen you back then. The way I see you now. I folded it. Put it in the same wallet slot as the old one. I think he would have smiled at that. Sometimes. Late at night. I wonder what he'd say if I told him everything now. If I said I still remember the way he stirred his tea without ever drinking it. That he used to tap his foot whenever he was thinking. And I'd match the rhythm without even realizing. That I never stopped loving him. But I think he already knows. I don't know where you are right now, or if you'd even care to hear from me. But I've spent the last 2 decades holding parts of myself I only ever shared with you. That rooftop kiss, the smell of burnt popcorn in our first apartment, the fern we named for no good reason. You gave me something I didn't know I needed the chance to be real, even when I couldn't take it. I was a coward. You knew that. You were patient. I knew that. And somewhere in the middle, we loved each other the best we could, even if it wasn't enough. I see now that silence is just another kind of decision, and I chose it over and over. But I want you to know this. I remember you, not as a regret, but as a truth, the best kind. The kind I carry with me quietly, like a song no one else hears. Be well, be happy, be everything I didn't let us be. Dan. I didn't cry after writing it. Just sat there in the stillness of my office, light low, the walls breathing with night. It felt complete, not perfect, not redemptive, but enough. I printed the letter, folded it, and slid it into a drawer I rarely open. Not because it's a secret anymore, but because it belongs to a part of my life that no longer needs to be relived. And since then, I've been sleeping better, not great. I still wake up sometimes around 2:30 a.m. and stare at the ceiling like it owes me something. But it's softer now. The ache isn't sharp. It's just part of me. My son's starting high school this fall. He told me he might try out for theater. I told him to go for it. He might fall in love backstage. I said with a smirk. He rolled his eyes. Later that night, he knocked on my door, leaned against the frame, and said, "Was Theo your first love?" I paused, then said, "Yeah, I think so." He didn't press, just nodded, "Cool," and left. And somehow, that was the most healing moment of all. Not some big, dramatic reckoning, just a kid asking a question with no fear in his voice, and a father answering with no fear in his heart. Theo's not a ghost anymore. He's not a secret. He's a story. And now, finally, he's mine to tell. So now I sit here, lights low, with only the hum of the fridge and the ticking wall clock, You remind me that time is still moving. It's been quiet lately. Not lonely, just still. Like the kind of quiet you feel after rain. Not empty, just clean. There are nights I still walk past the old shoebox where the letters live. Sometimes I open it. Sometimes I don't. But it's there. And it's enough just to know it is. The truth is, I don't carry Theo with the same weight anymore. Not because I've let him go, but because I've stopped trying to make him fit into the life I have now. He was real, he was good, and he was loved. That's more than most stories ever get. And if you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for listening, but for letting someone else's past keep you company for a while. There's something healing in that, don't you think? To be heard, quietly, to be seen, even by strangers. So wherever you are right now, curled up under a blanket, brushing your teeth in the dim bathroom light, or lying awake with the ceiling staring back, I hope this gave you something soft to hold on to. Maybe it reminded you of someone. Maybe it made you feel a little less alone. Either way, I'm glad we shared this hour. Now, close your eyes, let the fan hum, and let this story settle into the dark like a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Good night.